to questions from our members. As most everyone knows, Mr. Renzi has held several leadership positions in Italy and elected Prime Minister 2014 at age 39. Is it fair to say that your medical records are not an issue with your press? In any event, in the less than 3 years he has been Prime Minister, he's frankly been a force for reform. Everything from modernizing the structure of government to implementing a set of pro-business economic policies, fighting social inequality, and taking a very practical but sensitive approach to immigration. While doing all of this, he's forged close relationships with leaders globally and across the political spectrum. As our own president has remarked, I've been impressed with the energy and the vision and the reforms that Prime Minister Renzi is pursuing. President Obama further added, his willingness to challenge the status quo has made Prime Minister Renzi a leading voice in Europe. That said, the Prime Minister does lead at a time of turbulence both in Italy and in Europe. Italy's economy, the Eurozone's third largest, remains challenged, less than 1% growth over a period of successive years. Unemployment, stubborn at 11%, particularly acute with a younger population, and a quite high debt to GDP. Now, frankly, as with many companies and many countries across the globe, political pressures in Italy continue to mount, and an anxious population has given rise to the Five-Star Party. An upcoming constitutional referendum, still too close to call, will have significant ramifications, both for the Prime Minister and for his ability to continue his great set of reforms. With that, Prime Minister, we welcome your remarks and we look forward to a conversation.
Thank you so much, distinguished guests. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here again. For an Italian Prime Minister, it's not usual to come back after 2 years because you smile. I'm not very happy for that because in Italy 70 years after World War II, 63 governments. And this is one of the problems of my country because the lack of stability, as you said, was one of the problems. Thank you so much for your disponibility to discuss about the future here. Thank you so much, Richard, for the new invitation. And let me be very brief in the introduction, brief remark. I discussed a lot with the team if start from the very great framework, global framework, and a very concrete approach 2 years later, the first meeting here. And I tried to combine together. If you think about 2 years ago, a lot of things are changed. In Italy, yes. In Europe. But let me be very clear, also in the United States. I don't know how many of you 2 years ago consider possible, this is not a question of votes, consider possible if Donald Trump could run for the presidency. This is not a polemics, it's a consideration. We live in the time of big data, but it's not easy to forecast a very great decision of politics. 2 years ago, a lot of discussions about the role of Russia around the world, about the sense of identity of Europe in the relation with migration, the real position of some of leaders of the single member states of EU are totally different from today. Totally different. The very rapid, very quickly change in the politics is, in my view, in my mind, an effect of the real change of the life day by day. Everything changed very quickly and very deeply. And I don't know if this is good or not good, but this is a reality. The image in my mind is the internet, social media, and new technologies. We can consider two different models. The model of Snapchat, a very simply message, particularly for the young people, who after 24 years was cancelled. No tracks, in theory, I don't know, maybe also not in theory, but no records, nothing. 24 years and all is cancelled. And at the same time, there is the great question about internet and innovation, about the longevity and the right of memory and the tracks. Just 1 week ago in Italy, one young girl killed herself because she left on the net, on the web, a bad video about her. So this is the symbol of a world in which we can consider the very deeply and quickly change. You cancel everything and nobody remember what happened 2 years ago, 2 months ago, and everything changed very, very strongly and very rapidly. And at the same time, the necessity of a long investment on the future. I start from here exactly to give a message about the real point important for my country in this moment, and then I conclude the remark with the list of results achieved. The real question in this moment for my country, but I think not only for my country, and I very appreciated this morning the speech of President Obama in the United Nations General Assembly, is exactly a division between the people who think the future is a place of hope and the people who think the future is a threat, place of preoccupations. The generation of my father think future will be better every day, and also the generation of my grandfather. And maybe the American dream believe that if you work hard, if we are strong, you can build a different future, a better future. Now the situation in the debates, particularly in Europe, but in my country this is true, this is particularly true, it's different. Because the future is considered from a part a possible preoccupation, a possible threat. And the father and grandfather are worried for the future of the children. Oh, internet, artificial intelligence, cyber technology, cyber new will create a world without job, jobless society, and what is the security for my children? This is the point. If we invest in the fear, we are finished. A part of European leaders in this moment invest in the fear. They built walls. But if we remember, Europe was built in the moment of failure of walls, not of the building of walls. I consider the place for the future of my country in the capacity to build bridge, not walls. Bridge between generations, bridge between different ideas, dialogue between different identities, with the very strong awareness of our identity, which is not the lack of sense of belong, but is the sense of belong to great history who need the future. So this is the clear and real point for the next years in Italy and also in Europe. For this reason, when I speak about terrorism, I don't speak only about the reaction in terms of security, cyber technology, police, but I speak also about culture, education. Because when I think about what happened in this period in the capitals of France, in the capitals of Europe, in Paris, in Brussels, and in other cities in our continent about terrorist attack, I know the killer come not from Syria, come not from Libya, come from suburbs, from banlieue, from our cities. And so we need a great, huge investment in the identity, in the culture, in the education. Our stability law, our budget law, decided in 2016, for the moment only in Italy, but I hope in the future in every country of Europe, for every euro for security, for cyber security, for technology, for police, the same euros for theater, for education, for sport, for culture, because this is a part of reaction. If we believe in the future as a place of hope and not only in the place of threats. This is the framework. Very briefly, President Obama explained very better than me in this morning in the United Nations General Assembly. But this is the division, and a cover of Economist just some weeks ago present that between two different visions of world. So the future in my mind is not right against left, is fear against courage, is fear against possibility to radical change of our life. Obviously this discussion is impossible if Italy don't look about the situation of today. 2 years ago here I presented you a list of possible reforms. A lot of you, I remember, look at me as a crazy man. I remember very well. Don't joke about it, I remember. Oh, this is the President of Council of Ministers, Prime Minister number 27, who proposed a reform of Constitution, public administration and justice, jobs markets. So, I'm here. 2 years and a half, I decided to avoid the presence last year to complete the package, and I show you some results, because I think one problem of my beautiful country is the lack of word. One word. So let me be very clear. I think Italy is the best country around the world in terms of beauty and the quality of life and a lot of things. And so I haven't a problem of benchmark. I consider my country one of the most incredible and amazing place. But it's my job. But I believe in that. But I think we have a lot of problems. One problem is the lack of one word. This word is accountability. If you search in the Italian vocabulary, what is accountability? Nobody knows the translation. It's a very great, is a very funny thing, but unfortunately it's true. So accountability is a language not present, is a word not present in Italy. I'm here to show you a very brief list in the name of accountability. Jobs Act, reform of labor markets. I copied the name to President Obama. I asked the authorization to President Obama. He told me, don't worry, it's open source. Okay. And today, after 2 years and a half, the numbers of new jobs in Italy are more than 500,000. 585,000 jobs. This depends on the Jobs Act, the reform of labor markets. 2 years ago here, there was a ghost in the Italian discussion. The Article 18, Articolo 18, a particular expression in the Italian debate. Now is not on the table. And the Jobs Act is done. Reform of public administration. It's not easy, but we invest a lot in digitalization. Not only fire the public employers who don't respect the law, and this in Italy seems incredible, unbelievable, and now is normality. But at the same time, a great investment in digitalization. I'm really glad to host in my office, to call with me, Italian guy who served for a lot of period in United States, served as, more correctly, a businessman, a manager, Diego Piacentini. He became a very important manager before of Apple and then of Amazon. He told me, there is an expression in Italy, in America, is giving back something to my community. So I'm ready. For 2 years, he left Amazon and the very good money of Amazon, and pro bono, because I'm not competitive with my friend Jeff Bezos in terms of salary, and with the pro bono, he served now as a commissioner for digitalization of public administration in Italy. Third, very important for me, the constitutional reform and institutional reform. Very simply, an easy system. Today in Italy we have, only in Italy, a system with the stability of government depend of two different chambers. Camera dei Deputati, Senato della Repubblica. And there is a terrible ping-pong between two chambers. And this is one of the reasons for which we changed 63 government on 70 years. Now, in the next weeks, we will go to referendum after the decision of senators to reduce the number of senators. And this is incredible if you think about it. First time in the Italian history, but I think not all Italian history, in which a man reduced the chairs, the places. A politician, not only a man, a politician reduced the chair. It's fantastic. It's Turkey who decide the Thanksgiving is before. It's more or less. More or less is the same. We invest in the justice, civil justice. Italy was the country, the worst country in terms of timeline for the process of trials. The situation is not good until today. It's not good, but it's better. It's better than 2 years ago, and we are the #1 in terms of the digitalization of courts. I think the future is digitalization, not the traditional processes if there is here men and women who love Alessandro Manzoni, you can remember Azzecca Garbugli, the very great page of Promessi Sposi, but this system is totally different, and we invest in digitalization, we invest in an approach different. And I can continue with the finance for growth, I can continue with the infrastructure. We launch a great plan for broadband in Italy, because we think the revolution of infrastructure will give us, in the next month, a gigabit society. And I can continue with reform of cooperative banks, who bring back, more correctly, we cut the traditional system of bank very focused on the vote of the single politician of territory. But I stop my list, and I give the message, the final message. The final message for Italy is exactly that. If we change, we are ready to change Europe. And if we change Europe, we give back to our continent the possibility to play a role in this very particular moment of history. Because I start from this framework not to show some picture of the present, but because I think for my children and my grandchildren, I want a future of prosperity as my grandfather thinking for me. To achieve this result, we need an Italy able to change and to continue to change, because the first step is start. But we have a lot of things to do in terms of growth, in terms of investment, in terms of innovation, in terms of combine together creativity and new society, lifestyle and neuroscience, architecture and design, and social issues. This Italy, able to change, could support in Europe, who in the last period lost a lot of our identity. The problem of Brexit is not Brexit. I'm sorry for this statement, not very intelligent. The problem of Brexit is not Brexit. No, it's not Brexit. The problem for Brexit is the lack of reaction of European people and the European leaders. This is the point for Italy, the principal point for Italy. And this is the reason that I will use in the next year in a very important 3 events. First, the G7 in Sicily, May 2017, Taormina, wonderful place, theater, incredible, Etna, sea, wonderful. But I think it's wonderful because there are an intelligence who create that. The masterpiece and the landscape is nothing without intelligence of the people, human capital, human education, human emotions. Second point, European Summit of Rome, March 25, because March 25 will be the 60th anniversary of signature of the first 6 countries, Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, and Belgium. Last but not the least, the presence in the Security Council to continue to push in the direction of the idea I present very briefly this morning. So, I'm ready for the discussion, but let me give a special thanks because a Prime Minister who come back after 2 years, in Italy it's a very new, and I'm really happy for that and really proud for your presence today. Thank you. Thank you.
So, thank you very much for those wide-ranging and great remarks. You touched at the end on Brexit, so why don't we start there? On Friday, you and 27 EU leaders met in Bratislava, UK excluded. And while Brexit wasn't the main topic, you certainly touched on it. What struck us, I think, here was that you had a leadership that in many ways was looking for, quote, more Europe, but your populations, in many ways, are looking for less Europe. Even in Italy, as we were saying at lunch, 40% or so of your population thinks less power at the EU is better. How does the leadership actually bring this together and try to get towards the promise of your vision?
It's not easy because Europe today is the field of the fight between fear and the courage. Exactly that. Is the normal field. I can explain a little example to explain better my position. If we think Europe, if you think about Europe, you image an incredible institution, 70 years of peace. My children look the Champions League and not the Italian soccer team. The people love Erasmus and study in a different university around Europe. An important athlete of Italian national team during Olympic Games, after the silver medal, present the flag of Europe. And she said, okay, I'm Italian, but I think it's absolutely important continue to believe in Europe. So Europe is that. But for the people, Europe is the responsible of every problem. In part for a narrative, negative narrative by populists. In part for the lack of vision of politics by European side. One example, earthquake in Italy, terrible. Terrible last 1 month ago. Very good emotion, very terrible emotion, very participation and compassion by a lot of people, also by European people, and no polemics for this in this case. After the earthquake, every Italian army, Italian police, Italian civil society, everyone reacted very strongly in support of these people and the families of the victims. But when we present a plan with Renzo Piano, with a lot of great personalities of the architecture, engineering and prevention to reduce the risk, we have a problem because there is the pact of stability who block the works in the schools. If I am a father or a mother and I think my school is blocked because there is a pact of stability created by some bureaucrats in Brussels, I consider Europe the responsible of every bad news around the world. So, my view is that we have to combine the great values and the great ideals with a concrete symbol, concrete measures to give a message. Europe is not bad. Europe is the place of possibility for the future. And this is the great challenge of our responsibility. After Bratislava, I wasn't happy because the message of a final document was a very technocrat message, without vision, without energy, without look, without horizon. I think Brexit is a problem. I'm sorry for Brexit. I think in perspective it will be a great problem for our friends of Britain, our friends, because in the medium term this decision, in my view, will be a great problem for UK, not now, in the medium term, but I haven't a problem. Brexit is Brexit. Now we will look at the future if we are able, and this is the pact for the new generation who drive Europe.
So staying there, sir, 5 years from now, you come out again, Bratislava. I was struck by how forward you were in your remarks about France and Germany. Economic model for Germany, one of fiscal discipline. You say relax austerity. Can economic goals, which is, I think, is at the root of a lot of the issues, can you actually make progress so that 5 years from now you have more of the vision you're describing for the EU and still try to get your economic goals, which is different than some of your partners?
I think European decision in the last years was a mistake. But Italian leadership wasn't able to give this message because the problem of Italy didn't come from Europe, but from the lack of reforms. So, first of all, I try to achieve the result of reform in my country. First, think about yourself. So, we achieve the result of reform. And then I explain my position. My position is very, very easy, very simple. Barack Obama, 2008, Europe, 2008. United States, Europe. 2008, crisis in EU, crisis in USA. USA decided to create a great plan of investment, a project of investment for the new jobs. Today, with all the different ideas about the judge, about President Obama, nobody could deny United States in the last 8 years knew the most incredible growth of jobs after World War II. So congrats, President Obama. EU, not. EU decide an investment on austerity, only austerity. We have to reduce the debt, we have to have attention about budget. It's finished the time of easy budget. But at the same time, austerity without vision, without infrastructure, austerity in time of crisis, risks to be an incredible mistake and enlarge the gap and the division between the poor, the difficult countries and the strong countries. Who is the only country who receive an advantage of this strategy? The country who invests in export. First of all, Germany. But today, Germany don't respect the rule of EU because there is the commercial surplus, who is more or less 3 points more than the rule. So I have to respect, I discussed with my people because I respected the European rule in the last 2 years. And I will respect also for the future, also if I'm not agree. Also if I'm not agree with the European rule. But I think it's important for reputation of Italy, respect the law, also if we are not agree. But why Germany don't respect the rule and the law? So this is the point. My idea is copy Obama. Now it's a very incredible situation for me because I copy 2 times in 20 minutes Obama and okay, open source, but I risk to exaggerate. Okay, but copy the strategy of. It's not important to call Keynes' memory. This is a time of investment. Obviously, we have to decide what type of investment. For me, neuroscience, life science, quality of life, longevity, culture. When I arrived, Pompeii was the symbol of ruins. Now Pompeii is finally come back to place of culture for every country of the world. So this is the question. My idea is change finally the economic policy of EU. And I think, and I conclude about it, maybe not my colleagues are not agree with me, but I think that the results of referendum in UK, particularly in some cities of the north of UK, and also the good performance of France, of Marine Le Pen, come not only from migration questions, but also from the lack of hopes for the new generation, forced to an incredible level of difficulties. So austerity is not the way for Europe. Stress austerity means destroy Europe.
Thank you. Thank you. Staying with last question from here before we go to our members. The referendum. You obviously talked about accountability, you talked about your vision, and you talked about a lot for tomorrow. Briefly, Mr. Prime Minister, what is at stake in the referendum, and if the referendum is not successful, does that mean reform comes to a halt?
A referendum is about constitutional law, about 3 points, essentially. First is the reduction of number of politicians. Could seem a stupid thing, but it's really a great message, because if Italy have to change, the first to change will be the politician, not the citizen. It's finished the time in which politician ask to citizen to change and is not able to change himself. So reduce the level of politician, it's great. Ambition for a people who think the citizens are the leader, not the politician. Just to make one example, today in the United States, between member of Congress and senator, you have 525 members, I think, 40...
535.
Okay.
But you're close.
Okay. And you are United States, not a big country as Italy. You have 1,000 members
I
of
don't think
parliament.
anybody here would be able to give you the count in Italy. That I'm sorry.
But it's interesting. It's interesting because we have the double of members of parliament of you. Because we have some president of region who have a salary better than president of the United States. Because we have a model in the past in which politicians are the crucial stakeholders of everything. And the consequence is every politician remain in the place of political chair for every day of life. If you think the government changed very quickly, but the people are the same. So this is the first, is change of vision. This seems more to the Anglo-Saxon democracy. Second point, the change of procedure of law. We believe in a world very, very quickly focused, very, very, very able to change deeply. We discussed at the start of this meeting. And it's impossible to have a system very prudent, very slow, in which there is a decision, the other chamber decide the opposite. If we change, you come back to the... This is a problem not only in Italy. Fukuyama wrote about vitocracy, we discussed during lunch. Vitocracy is a message very, very important. It's not only Italy in a problem of governability and stability. Spain is without a government and risk the third election in 1 year. You know, Germany in the last 3 elections for 2 times used the gross coalition. We can discuss about a lot of coalition around the European countries. But I think it's important to give simplicity. And the third point is the power of regions. So my idea is give a message of stability and simplicity. To become easy and simply is not a brief way, it's a contradiction, but to become easy, you have a lot of things to do to arrive to be easy. And I think this is the priority. What happens if the vote will be for not? The vote will be for yes.
I like the optimism. With that, we're going to open it to members. Front row, please. Remember, we are on the record, and make the questions brief.
Thank you.
And introduce yourself. Thank you.
Jeff Laurenti. Signor Presidente, you began with an allusion to the American presidential campaign. One of our 2 leading candidates has raised doubts about the utility of NATO and suggested that those countries that don't meet the notional 2% target of GDP for defense spending would be your fire. Italy has never met the 2% target, as best as I know, and you've got those other stability pact targets that would prevent you from meeting it, and yet you have troops in Afghanistan, you contribute troops to UN peacekeeping, unlike most Europeans or the Americans. You have participated in the campaign against Daesh in Iraq, I think. What for you are the priorities, as opposed to the priorities that NATO bureaucrats might set, for how Italy's defense capabilities should be structured? What are the roles for the defense institutions in Italy? Is it for peacekeeping, or is it for air and naval combat?
Right, thank you.
What do you think?
Great question. I try to be brief. 2% is the goal also for Italy, but the problem is also in this case the Pact of Stability, because during a World Summit, September 2004, I proposed to other colleagues to cut from the Pact of Stability the investment on defense, and European colleagues, and I was alone. Now we are 1.1. If I look at my General Masiello, the responsible of this sector. Very briefly, what is the Italian commitment and what is the Italian goal? Italy is totally committed and engaged with the United States and other and the alliance, not only with the United States, but the United States are the best friend as the point of reference for us. We are in Afghanistan, as you said. We are in this moment on the request of Al-Abadi government and the United States government in Iraqi, in the Mosul dam, a very important intervention from Italian company of engineering. We are leading in Kosovo and in Balkanian. Please, when you consider the situation of Europe, don't forget nothing, never, don't forget never Balkanian area. Every problem comes from Balkanian area in the history of the last century. Please. And we are in Kosovo, we are in Somalia. Obviously, we have a very great attention about Libya for evident reasons. We have a lot of initiatives with blue helmets around the world. In our strategy, I think the priority for the future will be first, combine together research and defense, because we have a great engineering and a great quality of our men and women who fight for freedom around the world. Second point, I think is important to have a strategy, common strategy as a European leader and European countries. Historically, this is not a moment to discuss about the historical problem of a European strategy of defense, but in 1954, was the General de Gaulle to block this strategy, and I think it was a terrible mistake for the Europe, obviously with all the respect for the General de Gaulle as normal. And a third and last point, give a message to NATO to have a vision, maybe strong, obviously, but also very innovative. July 2016, NATO summit was in Warsaw, Poland. The place of the family photo was the place of the Pact of Warsaw. Exactly the same place. When I spoke during the table, I joke about it, because I said, my mother told me this country is the country of the bad men, not of our men. Our man was NATO. Now we are in Warsaw, the Pact of Warsaw. But this is the symbol of radical change. So we have to avoid a muscular relation with Russia, this is my opinion, but at the same time we have to preserve identity, sovereignty, and the respect of borders in every country, in Europe and not only in Europe. The real question is, as usual, Middle East and North Africa, and in my view is also the fight against jihadism and extremism, particularly in Africa. But if I start about it, I don't finish, so please block me, because
Thank you.
If I continue, it is answer.
Well put. Woman, please, dressed in black. Thank you. Yes.
Turn off my micro in a moment. Because
Nina Gardner, I'm Director of Strategy International and the founder of a number of Italian professional women's groups. My question is about growth in Italy. The two-pronged growth. One is Italian women are not having children anymore because of the lack of services. Second, economic growth. Italy is ranked third to last among the OECD countries in terms of Italian women in the workforce. Italy also spends half the EU average on services toward maternity and infancy projects. What are you going to do about it? Because that, at the end, is what we want Italy to grow. Unless you take, if Trump wins, you take all the young Democrats from the United States who don't care about maternity benefits because we don't have them in the United States, or health insurance, and all move to Italy.
About the last question, I don't respect the diplomatic protocol, because yesterday during a Clinton Global Initiative, I gave a special invitation from my wife to President Clinton for G7 next year as first gentleman by my wife to invite President Clinton is not very correct, but obviously, jokes apart, my opinion, my personal opinion is clear, and also if obviously Italy will work with every president, particularly if woman, but this is not important. We will see in the next weeks. The two points. I agree with you. It's not correct the last result about the half of average of EU, because I think this is the result of 2013, the last. But the sense of your question are clear, and I agree. First, the lack of growth in terms of demography, the lack of maybe also of hope. One of the terrible problem of our countries is exactly the lack of new families, couples, new relation, and also France have an average of children better than us, very better, and this is a problem for us. So we try to create a strategy in the last 2 years. The first is Jobs Act, because the first service is job. Without a job, it's impossible to have a vision and the future. And it's important, the first signal in this direction. But if there is the job, it's not the services, as you said, the problem remains. So this is one of the priority for the next months, and the first signals are too much level. I agree with you. About growth, economic growth is paradoxically is less important than demographic growth in my mind, because without a quote of the great speech of Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy, Bobby, when he spoke about the GDP, and the GDP is not only a list of things, but don't involve a lot of very great values. GDP don't involve, for example, the demographic problems, and I agree with you. For me, the first problem is the lack of growth in terms of demography. The second, the last of growth in terms of economy. When I was here 2 years ago, I came from 3 years of recession. 2 years of recession, because 2012, Monti's government, the GDP was minus 2.3. 2013, Letta's government, GDP was minus 1.9. Now the forecast is 1 point plus. It's better, but it's not enough. So the real question for us is come back to investment, because 2012, the level of investment in infrastructure, in the public investment, not the private, was the half of 2006-2008, 20 billion against 40 billion. Now we are 30 billion this year. So we come back step by step. But at the same time, we have to create conditions for the growth, reduce the red tape of bureaucracy, give simplicity to judicial process, give an opportunity to in the relation between university and job, and obviously invest in the new generation with the reform of education and the school. So the 2 questions correct, 2 problems open for Italy. We are better than 2 years ago, but better is not enough.
Thank you. How about from the back? Yes, gentleman holding the paper there. Yep, thank you.
Bill Drozdiak, McClarty Associates. Mr. Prime Minister, good to see you again. Italy has replaced Greece as the main point of entry for hundreds of thousands of immigrants coming in to Europe. What do you think should be done in collaboration with the United States and your other allies in order to forestall this problem, particularly with ISIS in control of much of the coastline and also getting involved in trafficking so many of these refugees?
Personally, I think there is a great difference between the problem of security and the fight against ISIS and Daesh, I prefer to use the expression Daesh, and the question about migration. Because the experience of the last 3 years in Italy, and not only Italy, show that the terrorists came in Western society not with the ships of refugees, but with a plane in business class, as happened in the United States 15 years ago for 9/11. And in alternative, they grow up inside our city, our cities. Attention, please, because this is a very important point. I tried to explain before, but maybe it's with not a clear message, and I'm sorry for that, for my responsibility. The killer who called Jihadi John, killed by United States, thank you so much for that, in November 2015, the day of Bataclan. So nobody give attention about this point, but the same day, one day before, I don't remember, Jihadi John was killed by American people, American troops. Wasn't a Syrian man, wasn't a Libyan man, but he grew up in UK. He grew up in the school of UK. He played soccer with the children of UK, exactly as the guys of Bataclan, the killer of Bataclan, who grew up in Brussels, Molenbeek quarter, all the people who attacked the airport of Brussels. So, the question is that there is a great problem of migration in Europe, and I arrived to discuss about it. But the question against terrorism and for respect of security is different from the question of migration. This is important because in the message of some populists in Italy, just to make an example, there are a lot of people that, oh, they came from Libya and there are potential killers. The vast majority of those guys escape from the killers, escape from Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, Daesh, and other terrible association and organization of crime. So this is the reason for which I try to divide very clearly two different points. But I know in the common discussion a lot of people share the same preoccupation about this point. I arrive to the answer, and I'm sorry for this introduction. First, Italy in this moment have more or less the same migrants of 2015, a little more, and a little less of 2014. The number, complex number, is not a terrible number because less than 200,000 people. Just to make a benchmark, Germany last year welcomed 1.1 million people. But what is the problem? The problem is, for us, it's impossible to welcome everyone. We try to save everyone because we belong to human being, and we think impossible to see a woman, a girl, a man, a boy in the sea, and give the message, sorry, I have the problem with my pulse, I have the problem with the survey. I lose the point of consensus if I will save. I prefer lose consensus than lose the dignity in front of my children. So we continue to save everyone is possible. And I spend the money of the public citizen to bring back from the sea, from the deep sea, with more or less 400, 500 people died, closed in the ship last April 2015, because my culture my grandfather, who is not a man of culture because he went from farm, but the culture of Italy teach us, learn us, it's important to give a tomb to the people. It's not good read Iliad or Antigone and not be able to give a tomb to the people. So this ship now is in Augusta, and I propose to bring the ship and use the ship as monument in Brussels in front of new headquarters of European Union, costed a lot of billion of euro. But, and I arrive to the point, Italy have a strategy to returns and proposed a strategy with the European colleagues. But Italy gives the message, the first priority is invest in Africa. In the last period, China invested a lot in Africa, more than Europe, a lot of money more than Europe. If we can block the people, the only way is create jobs opportunity in a country very rich as Africa, because Africa is rich. This is the strategy, block the people. I don't think this is a problem of the United States. If the United States have to discuss about the refugees problem, and now I will go to the President Obama summit about that, start maybe from Lebanon or from Jordania, countries more or less of 5 million of people, and with 2 million of refugees inside the border. So the problem of less than 200,000 people come from the fear and the lack of the good organization. But I think the best solution is try to save everyone, but block the people and organize return. European Union said in the past, okay, we organize the relocation. And statement without consequence because nobody wants relocation. So this is the lack of credibility from some of European leaders.
Thank you for a complex answer. And to
Very-
a complex
very legal.
question, but more importantly, to a very compassionate answer. We have time for one more question.
But I
Right
think
here.
the answer will be brief.
Well,
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Renzi. I almost said Mayor Renzi because it's Benjamin Barber and you and I sat together the morning you went to Rome when you were still the mayor of Florence, and you talked passionately that morning about the role of cities and metro regions in the future of Italy. I know your constitutional reforms have involved also a more prominent role for metro regions in Italy. And my question is simple. Do you think there's a role for Italian cities and European cities, Italy of cities and a Europe of cities, in addressing a more courageous and hopeful future as against the national politics of populism and reaction where so much fear seems to be? Can cities play a role in that hopeful scenario you've drawn for us?
thank you.
The answer yes. To give a brief decision. Yes. And with the time of brief answer, a lot of leaders come from the experience of the city. This is new. The mayor of Buenos Aires became the president of Argentina. Good guy, Mauricio Macri. The president of Indonesia. I remember Barack Obama told us the club of mayors because we came from experience of local experience. But I think we need mayors able to consider in the next 25 years, the 50% of people will live in the cities and the urban areas. So we need in the smart cities, in the renewable energies, in the digitalization of the service, we need a leader able to invest in the future. I have an answer for the next 25 minutes, but I think it's better avoid and give a special thanks to here.
You are great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And that was just wonderful. Thank you, everybody, to our members. Thank you so much. That was great. That was just great. Just great.
I'm sorry for the very